Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about a real classic in the realm of science fiction movies, 1954's Them, directed by Gordon Douglas and starring James Whitmore, James Arness, and Edmund Gwenn. Them is a favorite of my mom's since way back when, so I've been familiar with it since I was pretty young. I haven't seen it as many times as some other old sci-fi films, though, and it had been quite a few years since I last saw it, so this was almost like getting to see it for the first time again. Almost. Not quite, but close enough. Two New Mexico state policemen encounter a little girl wandering around the desert in her nightclothes, clutching a broken doll. She's in shock and unresponsive, but they manage to connect her with an abandoned trailer they find nearby. Strange clues suggest something sinister happened to her family before they disappeared, and with the discovery of a body at a second alleged crime scene, the investigation intensifies. But are they dealing with a homicidal maniac, or something even more monstrous? A box office success when it was first released, Them has since gained a reputation as one of the best sci-fi horror creature features of the decade, and with good reason. It's a fantastic movie. I don't know if it's possible, but I would love to show it to someone who has no idea what it's about, no clue who or what the title is referring to. I can barely remember a time when I didn't already know, and because it is such a famous and iconic movie, it's one of those things where everybody seems to know or have at least an inkling. But think how neat it would be to go into it cold and be surprised how much spookier and more mysterious the film is when you don't know what's going on. So if by some chance you have never seen Them and you don't know anything about it and you can get to it without learning anything, I say go and watch it and take advantage of that lucky opportunity because you're going to have a special experience. The film starts with a bang, great opening music playing as the title jumps out, this shocking pop of color in an otherwise black and white film. I guess the original plan was to make a 3D color film, but camera malfunctions when they went to shoot it forced them to scrap that idea, except for this awesome opening. Them has a skillful build-up, no hints dropped by the main titles, no corny prologues setting things up. It simply begins with a mystery, a missing persons case, and a survivor of some sort of attack. Then you have the sequence at the general store, with the swinging overhead light, the wind howling and whistling outside, and the feeling there's something very wrong. It's great atmospheric horror movie stuff. And there's that noise! It's a mixture of a tree frog sound and a few different bird calls, and it's one of the film's most distinctive features, bound to either give you goosebumps or get on your nerves. The movie does a nice job building suspense, drawing things out, and making you wait a good half hour before revealing that the them we're dealing with is, in fact, giant ants. More specifically, giant killer ants mutated by radiation from an atomic test conducted in 1945. I'm not sure if this qualifies as the first giant bug movie, since 1933's King Kong did have massive creepy crawlies in its deleted spider pit scene. I would argue, though, that Them is the best giant bug movie, certainly of the 1950s, beating out Tarantula, which is excellent, and The Black Scorpion, which is fun, as well as more underwhelming films like Cosmic Monsters, The Deadly Mantis, and The Wasp Woman. Wisely, the film never lets you see too much for too long, keeping shots of the ants short and active. Exposure does increase in increments, eventually leading to a giant ant party, but we never get a chance to scrutinize them too closely. Thanks to careful lighting and staging, the mechanical props never look cheap or silly, and to this day, the effects, which garnered the film an Academy Award nomination, are smooth and convincing. Them features a score composed by Bronisław Kapir. That's the second time this month I have mentioned him. The first was when I talked about the 1953 Western The Naked Spur, and hopefully I've pronounced his name correctly this time. Bronisław Kopyt was a very prolific Polish composer whose music I've heard in many a film, although he's not as widely known as some other classic film composers, and I think he did an excellent job on this score. Most noticeable are the dark, ominous piano notes that introduce a sense of foreboding at the start and underline the danger in the awesome nest descent sequence. The score is not omnipresent or intrusive, however. In pivotal scenes, the music is absent, allowing an eerie stillness to dominate the moment. Then, when the music does come in, it's used strategically to complement and enhance the mood of the scene. It's really well done. What I think really holds the film together, though, is the likable, memorable cast of characters. In my opinion, James Whitmore and James Arness share the lead, although Whitmore is the one I primarily associate with the film. Honestly, I didn't even remember that James Arness was in this movie. It's like they divided the protagonist's responsibilities between the two of them, Whitmore getting to do more heroic deeds, while Arness gets to flirt with the leading lady. Whitmore plays the state police sergeant, a smart, practical officer whose first-hand knowledge secures him a spot on the select team dealing with the situation. His hands-on expertise and his patient approach make him an asset when it comes to questioning unstable witnesses and hurting ornery scientists. And he's a caring man. He is personally invested in this case, and he never forgets about the little girl, frequently mentioning that he wants to get back to the hospital and be there if she starts talking. Whitmore was short and stocky, not a glamorous star and not leading man material, but his character is so real and feels so genuine that he barely seems like an actor playing a role at all. James Arness may be most famous for starring in the long-running Western series Gunsmoke, but I dare say sci-fi and horror aficionados like myself remember him best as the titular monster from 1951's The Thing from Another World. Here, he plays an FBI field agent who joins the investigation.
He's with the FBI, so watch your language. Oh, I will.
And it's refreshing that he doesn't just barge in and say, well, the FBI's here, we're taking over. He doesn't shut the police out, he works alongside them. And far from competing with each other, he and Whitmore kind of become buddies, developing the camaraderie that comes from a shared, weird experience. Then all you have to do is add in Edmund Gwenn and Joan Weldon as the Doctors Medford, a father-daughter pair of experts from the Department of Agriculture, and you've got your team. Edmund Gwenn is delightful as the absent-minded, slightly eccentric scientist. He's the type who's not used to being out in the elements, especially not a gritty sandstorm in Alamogordo.
The goggles, Doctor.
What about them?
You're supposed to wear them on over your eyes.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Yes, that is better.
Gwen contributes a good deal of comic relief in the first half, brushing aside persistent demands for answers and struggling to cope with protocol.
This is ridiculous. A lot of good your rules are going to do us if we don't locate
Over
them.
and out. Oh, now you're happy.
But while he may provide the laughs at times, at others he lends the film gravitas. It was intended to be taken seriously, and it's largely thanks to the sincerity of the performances and the validity of the questions posed regarding scientific unknowns that it succeeds as well as it does. Playing his daughter is musically trained actress Joan Weldon, who took a break from making westerns to assume the role of the lady scientist. Dr. Pat Medford doesn't get to do as much as the men. You won't see her waving a flamethrower around or firing a gun, but she does do more than your average leading lady in a film like this.
Now destroy everything in here. Burn it.
What?
I said burn it! Burn everything!
She's highly knowledgeable in her field, she's fearless, and she acknowledges that her father is too old and frail to enter dangerous situations from which he might need to get away in a hurry, so she insists on taking his place. Of course, she is also the attractive female lead, so there is a tiny hint of romance added in, but it's very subtle. Having these engaging characters who speak smart, fun dialogue helps spice things up, and the rest of the cast is great too. Sandy Drescher makes a strong impression as the little girl. The shot of her screaming may be the film's most famous image, more iconic even than the ants. And Mary Ellen Hokinson gives a memorable monologue as the heartbroken mother of 2 missing children. And then there are the bit parts. This film has a wonderful collection of minor characters who pop in for just one scene to answer a few questions or to make a speech, and boy did they make the most of their limited screen time.
Well, what kind of sense does that make? Is sugar a rare cargo? Is there a black market for it? Did you ever hear of a fence for hot sugar?
Some of these appearances are of actors before they were famous, like Fess Parker playing a frustrated mental hospital patient and Leonard Nimoy as an incredulous military intelligence officer. I was not expecting to see him in this movie, so suddenly I was like, wait a minute, who was that? He's very young, and it's very quick, a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing, unless someone tells you ahead of time to be on the lookout for it, which I just did. All of these colorful characters help keep the film entertaining through a section that might otherwise have lagged. Instead, it's able to keep up a consistent pace, and it goes from one thing to the next with no fooling around, no time wasted, no frivolous side quests, no fake-outs. There's only one spot where I felt they pumped the brakes, and that's when Dr. Medford rolls out the educational ant film to convince the government honchos that this is serious. I'm not sure it was the best idea because it slows momentum, but I do concede that it helps clarify what we're dealing with and how feasible it is, within reason. But that's one slower spot in a 94-minute film that for the most part keeps things moving. One highlight is the venture into the nest, our intrepid trio making a spooky descent down winding tunnels held together by ant spit. I can't believe that I forgot about this sequence. It's one of the best parts. When they torch the eggs with the flamethrower, though, I couldn't help thinking, where have I seen this before? And, you know, Aliens also has the rescue of a little girl who won't speak, who witnessed her family getting killed and was the lone survivor. It's interesting. By the way, my mom said that she has always found the close-ups of the characters in their gas masks particularly memorable because it makes them look like insects. One aspect of the film I'm not so fond of is the hush-hushness, the cover-up and denial of facts in the name of public safety. This is used as an excuse for the imprisonment of an eyewitness under false pretenses, the destruction of a vessel to conceal evidence, and the deception of victims' families. I know, they don't want to incite a panic because then they'll have an even bigger problem on their hands, and keeping a situation like this restricted to those who are on a need-to-know basis is understandable, and it's the prevailing opinion that, like, well, this is just what we've got to do, and the way they handle it is typical, it's expected, it happens all the time, probably, but it bugs me. No pun intended! One thing I think may have been a little ridiculous was having the ants show up on a ship at sea. It's just, I don't know, I can accept a lot, but that may be too much. And I suspect that the filmmakers agreed, and that's why they only show one shot of it. And another thing I couldn't help grinning at was the repeated usage of the Wilhelm scream stock sound effect. This was only 3 years after the first Wilhelm scream debuted, so it wasn't yet the joke that it has become now. These days, you can only use a Wilhelm scream when you're trying to be funny, but in this film, they used it several times in all seriousness. It's an unfortunate byproduct of time. Well, maybe it's not so unfortunate because it is funny. Even though I don't know why they thought it necessary to dub over the actors' natural yells and screams. Was it not loud enough? Did it not come through over the chirping noises? I don't know. But it sure sticks out like a sore thumb. Ah! I can't do it. That sounded like Howard Dean. Them has some clever instances of implied gore, like a shot of an ant tossing a human ribcage that's been picked clean out of the nest. They also did some nice location shooting at the Los Angeles Drainage Canal. Obviously, that's a cool place to shoot a movie, because it shows up in a lot of things. And I like the soft haziness of the storm drain scenes. It's dark and spooky, but the actors are clearly illuminated in an artistic way. And then we have a dramatic finale that is both compelling and very noisy. Honestly, I'd forgotten how good this movie is. Considering the material, it's almost better than it deserves to be, but I don't believe that just because something has a far-fetched monster in it, that means it has to be a bad movie. And the film encourages you to wonder whether or not it's really that far-fetched. Like most good science fiction, it's rooted in fact, and it throws you one last somber question. If this was the result of one atomic bomb detonation, what about all the other bombs that have been tested and detonated? How many other monstrosities are mutating out there and posing a threat to the human race? It's an idea that science fiction movies of the era had a field day with. I highly recommend this one if you haven't seen it. Everything's great. All the performances, the writing, the effects, the music, the settings, the whole shebang. While I was working on this video, I did see an announcement from a couple months ago that said film composer Michael Giacchino is set to make his feature directorial debut with a remake of Them. Am I excited about that? No. I like Michael Giacchino's scores, and I like monster movies, but I don't think Them needs to be remade. It's a fine film as it is. I just feel like, hey, come up with your own idea. But that's just me. I hope that you enjoyed this review. Let me know your thoughts on this movie if you've seen it in the comments below, and I'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.